I'll take credit for that.
Yeah, it looks so good.
The secret for everybody who comes in on early, this is a Canva template that I tweaked to make my own. So I changed all the colors, I changed the fonts to match my branding and everything, but I'm not a original design is not my strength. Seeing good design and then being able to tweak and make it my own, that is more up my alley. So
Yeah.
Canva, Canva does a lot.
Canva is amazing and once you get like a couple templates that you like, just being able to repurpose them over and over again. And then you can have like multiple people, like we have like our assistants and everybody in there too. So I can say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, that template we used for this event 2 weeks ago, just use that one and change out the photos or this or that. And it's easy for them to update.
Yeah. Pretty much every design that I ever do is done through Canva.
Okay.
But I've worked with Josh Passler before, which I would highly recommend. His images and graphics are awesome. So
Yeah.
um, one day I would love to have him as like an outsourced chief design officer to just have him do all this stuff for me.
He's so good. One of a kind, like really different stuff, which I love.
All right, I'm going to stop the screen share for now so we can kind of get things going as people stroll in. The numbers are starting to tick down, so we'll go ahead and kick things off. And I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of the middle of your day in the middle of the week to join Sam and I. And also thank you, Sam, for taking time out of your week to come join me in this talk. The Keep Pursuing series, I want to give you just a real quick background of it and what it is and why I'm really excited about it. So I'm going to share a picture from last fall. And I've written about this before, but I don't expect everybody on here to have read what I've written. But one of my goals is to be a public speaker. It's authentic to me. It's part of my authentic life, part of what I want to do, what I enjoy. And so instead of waiting around to have people ask me to be a keynote speaker, last fall I said, I'm just going to create my own series. I don't care how many people come. I'm going to call it the Keep Pursuing series. And everything that I'm going to talk about is moving people more and more towards their authentic lives. So that series in the fall, which this picture is from, was at a local coffee shop, and it was just designed for everybody. And as you know, with this series, this is more designed towards financial advisors. But really, if you're not a financial advisor and you still joined us, I think the overarching principles of what we're going to talk about today will impact everybody, regardless of who you are. But being in the financial advisor space, understanding it, Sam understands it. There are some unique things that may or may not prevent us from being able to live our authentic life. So that is the point of this series, is to try to find a way to bring who you truly are, if you know who that is. If not, find that version of yourself. And how can you bring that to your profession? How can you bring that to work for reasons we'll get into in a minute? So before I kind of dive in and kind of kick things up, I do want to give a big shout out real quick to the AGC. The AGC is the sponsor for today's webinar. So if you're not familiar with the AGC, a little bias here. I am the co-founder of the AGC, but it is a community for financial advisors. There's about 155, 60 advisors across the globe. And the premise of this is a place to come together with like-minded advisors to grow personally and professionally. So if you are an advisor and you feel like you're on an island, maybe because of the stuff we're going to talk about today or for other reasons, there are a lot of great advisors in the community. We have open houses from time to time. You can check one of those out. So it's not a full pitch, but I do want to bring attention to the AGC because there are a lot of great conversations going on there. Some like this, some like others. We've had Sam in before to talk about marketing with us. So I want to thank the AGC for sponsoring this first webinar. And with that, I'll let Samantha give her own introduction because I think most of you know her. You're probably here to hear from her more so from me. But I always like to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves because, Sam, you may have something about yourself that you want to share with people that I don't know, and I would do a disservice. So just real quickly introduce yourself in case there's one or two people out there who do not know who you are.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. So, hi, everybody. I'm Samantha Russell. I currently serve as the Chief Evangelist at FMG. I have been helping advisors with marketing about a decade, which is crazy to me now. I live in State College, Pennsylvania, and I have three little kids who are 2, 6, and 8. And the way I got into this space is kind of happenstance, honestly. My husband, who was a professor at Penn State at the time, was doing a lot of side projects because he was a designer and got asked to build this series of websites for a financial services company. And as he was building them out, he noticed that all the advisors that were underneath the company that he was linking to had really crappy websites. He said, there has to be a better way. And he started learning about compliance and why they didn't. And so this is probably 15 years ago at this point. So he set out to build a solution. And the company he founded was called 20 over 10. And he and I and two other business partners grew it over, honestly, just a handful of years to be a really big competitor to the biggest players, one of which was FMG. And then in 2020, at the end of 2020, after a year of the pandemic kind of skyrocketing our business and user base, we were acquired by FMG. And one of the goals of that was really to bring all of the things we had learned over there. And now my job is really to connect with advisors and teach them strategies to grow using a lot of the things that people know of, such as websites, social media, video, but also lately, especially, I've really been talking a lot about messaging because I found that you can have a beautiful website. You can post to social media a lot and get a good following. But a lot of times people don't realize the words that they're using are not landing or they're not infusing enough of their own story. And people are choosing their financial advisor because of the relationship, right? So I'm so excited when you asked me to join, Justin. And I would just love to ask, maybe everybody could put in the chat, do you feel like you can be your own real true self right now in the role that you currently have? Or do you feel like you kind of have to still hide some of that to fit within the industry?
Actually, don't throw it in the chat. I'm going to launch a poll right now.
Oh,
So I'm going to
sorry,
launch
you
a
already
poll
have
and throw it in the poll. Because the question is, do you feel like the profession forces you to not be yourself?
Okay.
And maybe I could have worded it differently, but it was something that I have experienced myself. And I'm going to show one of my favorite pictures in a moment of me experiencing not being able to be my true self. And not at the time, I didn't realize it. But, I've had a bunch of conversations with advisors. I'm working with an advisor that I think of right now. And his comment to me is perfect for today because he said he feels like he has to present a certain image because he's a financial advisor. He has to wear a suit. He has to drive a certain car. And I think part of these stories we tell ourselves that pull us away from being fully authentic, some of it might be true. There might be some people out there that expect their advisor to look a certain way. But I think some of it also it's in our head. It's stories we tell ourselves that keep us confined. And I don't know about all of you, but if you have ever been in a situation where you aren't able to be your true authentic self, you might wind up feeling like this. So this is a couple stops ago, and this was the day we were getting photos for our website, the company website. And that is not my tie. They styled my hair. And I don't even know why I took this selfie other than I think I took it back then for today and for what I'm doing today to have this example of myself. The crazy thing is, at that moment, I didn't really understand that I was not being my true self. I was being the truest version of myself in the constraints that somebody else was putting myself in. So I wasn't being fake, but I wasn't fully being myself. And on the other side of that picture, you see me today in a t-shirt. My office doesn't look like a financial advisor's office. I am able to be myself, and I can't tell you how freeing that is and how much better of an advisor I am because I get to be me. And my whole mission is I want more advisors to find that freedom and flexibility so they can do a better job for their clients. And that's why I want to do this session with Sam. And the whole series is directing us all towards bringing more of our true self to the profession. A couple housekeeping things, and then we'll really dive into the conversation. One, I want to remind everybody that the structure for this is meant to be more of a podcast / fireside chat. So we have a few slides will pop up from time to time, but really I want it to be a conversation between Sam and I, but also there's a Q&A. Throw your questions in there and we'll incorporate them as we're going so we can address those as well. The second thing is, on a broader sense of authenticity, I'm going to kind of define it in my terms and ask Sam how she defines it in a second. But one of the things I want to make sure everybody kind of grasps is, while there might be a universal idea of what authenticity means, how you express your authenticity and how much of your authentic self you bring to work is unique to you. So some of the examples we may talk about, you might be able to do, but that might not feel authentic to you, then you definitely shouldn't do it. So I don't live in a world where there are absolutes. There's not one right way to do everything, but there is one way to be your true self, and how much of that you bring and how you bring it is totally up to you. So use this conversation as a starting point to kind of evaluate where you are, think about yourself. How happy are you? Are there changes? And then how can you bring some of that? You'll get some ideas from today. So I'll before I define authenticity, Sam, when you think of the term authenticity, what do you think about?
How I define it?
Yeah, how do you define it? Or even what do you think about? Just open-ended
Yeah.
question.
So for me, it's like a gut feeling. If I am doing something and it feels like fake, or this isn't really truly me, or almost I don't want to say pretentious, but sort of pretentious, those things all immediately make me feel like I'm going too far in the trying to impress other people side
Mm-hmm.
of things. But I think the flip side can be true, where sometimes we maybe have seen people who use a platform like LinkedIn's a good example, where it's supposed to be professional, and maybe they go almost too far the opposite direction and like oversharing things that it's fine to share, but maybe it's best for like a small group of your closest friends or family members and not the whole world. So I like to live in a space where, what does my gut tell me? Is
Mm-hmm.
this the Sam that I want 99% of the world to know? There's always going to be things that you reveal to your closest, confidants in your life, family or friends. But the person that I appear to be online and, on a podcast and on a webinar and on stage, I want to come off stage and people to feel like they're having a conversation with the person that was just on the stage, not
Mm-hmm.
someone different. Like, remember how people used to have like a phone voice? You'd pick up the
Mm-hmm.
phone and your voice was different. I don't want the phone voice. Like
Mm-hmm.
that to me is so that gut feeling of I'm the same person in all of these situations.
I think it's an important thing to dive in on a second, is because, with finance, trust is a big part of the relationship we develop with our clients. And if you're growing your business through various forms of content and you're putting one version of yourself out there, and then when the clients come in, it's a totally different version, like there's energy that we emit, and there's things we pick up on, that intuition that pulls up. And if you don't match who they expect you to be, it's going to be an internal feeling they're going to have that's going to be a red flag, and you don't want any red flags from the beginning. So if you are presenting one way and they come in you're another way, you've already broken some level of trust because the expectations don't meet. But on top of that, it's pretty exhausting to put on an act all the time. So if you do have this persona that you're putting on publicly, and then you have to pretend to be that when they come in, it gets exhausting. And Lindsay Troxel, who's a friend, is going to be later on in the series, said something we were talking the other day that really made a lot of sense to me, is that a lot of burnout is a result of being inauthentic, because of all of the extra energy that you have to put into being this version of yourself that you're not. And
Yeah.
if you are yourself, it's very easy. It's easy to be your true self. It's
It's
hard to put on a front.
it's so funny you say that, because when we first started our business in this industry, I used to hide all the time that I had little kids at home. Like
Mm-hmm.
I might, I was pregnant and I had a 2-year-old. And let's say it was like one of those mornings where childcare fell through, I'm sick, all this stuff. And I used to like try to hide it. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. There's a last minute thing that came up. I can't meet with you. And then I realized like it just sounds like I'm prioritizing maybe in a more important meeting over the one I was supposed to take. But when I just said, look, my childcare fell through and I have 2 little kids at home, whatever, people were like, oh my gosh, I've totally been there. No big deal. Right. And so being honest or authentic in that way of like, this is truly what's happening in my life, for whatever reason, once I kind of embraced that, it changed things for me. I didn't feel so stressed out about it all the
Mm-hmm.
time.
And now we get Teddy on video calling himself poop. It doesn't get more
Yes,
authentic than
he does.
that.
Yes, he does. But
So,
it's funny because my husband never would do that. Like he would
mhm,
never in a million years say, I'm so sorry, but I got to go pick up my kid from school. He's sick. He would just
mhm,
say like something came up. I can't do it. And so for
mhm,
him, it felt uncomfortable to share personal things, which ended up being like kind of comical when you look back on it, because so much of his story became so public. But
right.
um, that was not his MO like
Mhm.
initially.
Well, it's important to identify that, though, because had he tried to go the other route, it would not be authentic to him, and it would come across, probably he would probably fumble over his words trying to come up with it, tell
Yeah.
the truth, and would come across as if he was lying. So going back to, you have to figure out how to bring what feels authentic to you to everybody and not try to do things that don't fit. And that doesn't mean you don't try to develop new skills and grow, but if there are certain things that just don't feel right, there's a reason they don't feel right, and you probably shouldn't be trying to do that.
Yeah.
So when I think of authentic, I just think of it as being myself. And going back to that picture, like I said, I always felt like I have been myself, but there were constraints that didn't allow me to fully be myself. And so when I think about advisors bringing their authenticity to their practice, bringing it to their clients, it's just being able to feel like you're comfortable in your skin. And the tough thing about authenticity, I think, from a experiencing it yourself standpoint, is it's a feeling. Like I can't give you like a checklist to check to say, yeah, are you authentic? Check these boxes, yes or no. So I think that's a tough part of it, and I think that's where some people may struggle. But what I would encourage you to think about is, go back through life and think about the times that you felt the most like yourself, and like, what were you doing? Where were you? Like, it just pull those back in, because that may give you some insight on what are the things that help you be your true self. And I have a worksheet that I'm going to email out to everybody afterwards that'll
Great.
have a few prompts to kind of do some of this thinking. But just for a moment, just think about a moment where you felt like you were fully yourself. I'll just give you a second to think about it. And if you were able to pull that moment up, how do you feel right now? Like, I bet you're pulling that emotion or that feeling that you had when you were fully yourself into this present moment. It's that powerful. So to me, authenticity and bringing that to the table is just allowing you to be your true self, whatever that means, and however you want to bring that to the table. Because when you are in that zone, that feeling that you just felt, think about how good of an advisor you can be when you're feeling like that. You do your best work when you're feeling your best. We don't do our best work when we feel like crap. And if you are confined or feeling like you have to be somebody that you're not, you probably don't feel your best, which will indirectly be impacting your work.
Love that.
So at what point did you, Sam, realize the importance of bringing everything you described earlier to the table? Like, was it when we were at 20 over 10? Have you always approached work that way? Like, at what point did you feel comfortable and confident to bring your authentic self to professional life?
I will say I'm very lucky. I'm the oldest of six children, and my parents, I don't know what they did, but they were really like all six of us are pretty confident, outgoing people who don't
Mm-hmm.
have a problem striking up a conversation with anyone and kind of being who we are unabashedly. When I first entered finance, because I didn't know anything about the space at all, and I'm trying to help all these advisors with marketing, I felt a little bit of that imposter syndrome. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember a mentor telling me, it doesn't matter if you've been in the industry for 10 years, a year, a month, you're going to feel imposter syndrome at times because smart people know they don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you know, the more you realize that. And so just sort of leaning into it and acknowledging it and saying it's going to be a part of your life forever and it's just going to make you better is
Mm-hmm.
okay. But I think when things really changed for me was when we started 20 over 10, we had no marketing budget whatsoever. And so you got all these big companies that have all of the leads, every single, we didn't have discovery data, which is what a lot of companies use to get lists. So we had no emails. So I would literally pull up a Google map and I would type in, financial advisor near me in that area. And I would get the list of all the different advisors that would come up. And I'd find their website and I would send them an email and say, like, we've never met before, but I help advisors with marketing. I took a look at your website and there's three things I noticed that you might want to think about changing or fixing.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no ask. Like I didn't say, do you want to meet or anything? I just gave them feedback. And then of course people would write me back and say like, oh, I never thought of that, or that's so great, or thank you, or whatever. And from that, I started making videos because I was like, instead of doing this one-to-one approach, I could do it a lot better if it was one-to-many. So I'd make one video and then I could send it to 10 different people I found who had that same issue on their website. And I'm a very like smiley, talk with my hands person. And the first couple of videos I made, I sent to someone and they were like, financial advisors are not going to like this. Like you got to tone it down. You got to dress a little different. Don't smile so much. Be a little bit more serious. And I tried it and I just couldn't do it. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
not me. And I realized you know what? If somebody doesn't want to work with me because I smile too much, then oh well, like I'm not going to work with
Hmm.
them. And so I just owned the way I was doing it and it started to really work. Like people responded well to it. Sometimes I trip over my words and make fun of myself in the video. I actually, growing up, had a speech impediment. And so my lisp will come out sometimes when I get nervous. So I remember one particular video I had like messed up multiple times. And I said, I should probably re-record this and send it to you, but I don't have time. So
Hmm.
you're getting this version. And it worked. So I kept leaning into it. But I would say that's when I really started to, you know, not be afraid of it and instead recognize like this is just who I am and it's gonna have to be okay.
There's a point that you made that I want to bring attention to, the idea that if somebody doesn't want to work with me because I smile too much, or whatever your thing might be, that maybe that's, if you were bringing it to the table, people wouldn't want to work with you. So people want to work with me because I like rap music or I have tattoos, whatever those things might be. You know, as a financial advisor, depending on your goals, if your goal is not to grow the biggest firm that's ever existed, that's perfectly fine, because now you're self-selecting the people who want to work with you because you smile a lot or because you like rap music or whatever your thing is. And I think that we have to remember that we can only serve so many people and do a good job. So why not serve the people who like you for you, which will allow you to always be yourself? Because that's part of the problem that, I've realized is that, especially in financial planning and financial advice, we get into this career, we kind of stumble our way in because it's not a good career path. We start to build a business, we begin to have success, and then we get later in life. I think 40 is a magic age. Carl Jung talked about it like the midlife awakening. I don't call it a crisis. You get to a point
I
where
like
you lived enough where you know who you are, and you also have gotten to the realization that most people aren't paying attention to you, so you kind of care less. But the thing is, that version of you've grown to may not identify with the people that you have. And now you have this kind of situation of, if I want to be my true self all the time, maybe my clients who have me won't like that because that's not who they started working with, or we have all these things. So I think it's just really important to realize that if people don't want to work with you because you're being yourself, that's perfectly fine. There's more than enough people out there who will like you for you, and those are the people you want to work with, anyways. A couple good questions in here I want to ask you, Sam. So, what would you consider off limits and should only be shared with family and friends?
good question. You're gonna hate this answer because I feel like it depends for
It's
everyone.
the financial. I was gonna say it's the financial advisor answer. We always default to depends, and then
Yeah.
we give the
For
reason why.
me, for me, like there's certain things like I truly, for the most part, don't ever talk about politics. And not because of like that I am embarrassed of them or anything, but I feel like that politics is an energy sucker in our world today, and I don't want my energy to be sucked away. So I avoid that. Um, I often don't like, there's can be a lot of debates even within our community about like what's the best structure for an advisor? What kind of fees should you charge? How should you be aligned? And it's like, I don't care about any of that. Are you doing good work? Are you helping people?
Mhm.
So for me, like the things that sometimes could maybe be controversial for other people and um help them find their tribe, I wouldn't lean into, but it might be something that you really want to talk about. Um, I also feel like a lot of times people will what's the word I'm looking for? Like, let's say you yourself are going through a divorce. And so
Mhm.
you want to use that as like talking about going through a hard thing and how you can help clients going through transition. I think we all know that like that could be done really tastefully and like, hey, I understand you, or it could be like airing dirty laundry and bashing the other person. So I think the line is gray, obviously, but it's more about what's going to feel comfortable for you. If something feels a little off, hold it. Like type it up, write it out, record the video, whatever, but like sleep on it for a couple nights and think about like if this is really out there, will that be something I'm proud of in a year?
I would agree with that. One thing I would add to it is understanding the potential consequences of the way you want to talk or things you want to talk about. So going back to politics, I wouldn't want to talk about politics because I hate politics. But if I was very heavily one party and I really really believed in that, then maybe I would want to. But I know 50% of the people are going to hate me because of my stance politically.
Right.
If I'm okay with that, and I only want to work with people who have similar values as me, then that may not be a bad thing. So it goes
Yeah.
back to what you said of what feels right. I've shared, and you mentioned sharing the kids. I've shared the boys for a long time, and why I ever started that, I don't know. It just felt natural. But not everybody's comfortable sharing their family, for privacy reasons and all the other scary things that can happen. But for me, it feels natural to do that, and it's easy for me to do it, but that may not be for everybody. So I think what you said was great. Another good question before we move on: as a college senior preparing to enter the field and on the path to discovering my true self, what advice would you give on staying authentic during this transformative period?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, one of the things that's hard when you're coming out of college is everybody makes you feel like whatever the first job you get is so important because, it's the trajectory for the rest of your life. And, whatever you choose is going to become your career path and everything. And I would say don't put so much pressure on yourself to like find the perfect fit. It's just about getting experience, getting out there, trying things, seeing what works. It's kind of like anything in life. Like a lot, you could study it up forever, but until you're doing it, you're often not going to know. So I would say, if you get into a job and they ask you to behave a certain way or do certain things that you don't feel like it aligns with you, then might be time to find another one, right? We had at 20 over 10, like we would always joke around because we had somebody who had dreadlocks, somebody had a nose piercing, like all these different things. And they would come from other agencies or marketing agencies or firms where they would say like, you can't wear dreads or you can't have that nose ring with client interactions. And we were like, we don't care. You do great work. Be you. So you'll find the right fit. You just maybe have to keep trying out different things until the right one lands.
I would say, as a soon to be graduating college student, I think it's tremendous that you have the awareness that you want to find your authentic self and pursue that path. On
That
that standpoint, like, I'll comment to that side rather than the business side, because I think Sam said everything that I would have said. I think, finding your true self, it's just giving yourself time to experience different things. So I'm big on following passions or following interests. Like, the interest in the passions you have, whether they're financial related or not, I would tell you to explore those, because there's a reason that you're being called to doing that, whatever it might be, and go explore it. And go back over all my blogs and podcasts and see all of the exploration I did as a financial advisor, which is what led me to where I am today, which I believe is like, this is my purpose. The work that I'm doing now is my purpose. So I would tell you, explore, experiment, try new things. Don't be afraid to fail. Learn how to pivot, because with the pivot and with the fail, there's really nothing that you didn't really fail. In that failure, there's a lesson that's learned. There's something that you now know that you didn't know before that will help you when you come back to the path that you were going down. And I do want to echo the finding the perfect career or perfect spot right out of college. That's hard to do for a number of reasons. One of the main ones being you don't know what you don't know. So again, going back to experience what a firm is like. Maybe it's a good fit, maybe it's not. You'll learn, and eventually you'll find the right fit for you or the right path for you, which is why so many of us in the profession have multiple stops on our resume, because at every stop you learn something new, and eventually you get to be a place where you're comfortable in doing your best work. So I just want to say, I think it's awesome you're thinking about that. And I
Yes.
would read The Alchemist. I would read that book as well. All right, so you mentioned 20 over 10. I want to bring this question in as well, because it brings authenticity to it. If you're willing to share, and
Yeah, I
there's
saw the
probably ways
question.
you can
Good one.
share. Yeah, so what was it about selling 20 over 10 that felt authentic to you and Ryan?
So when we started the idea of building the company, it was always kind of with this, like, can we take on this industry? This like, nobody on our founding team had any financial services background or experience, which was really rare. And so we were all learning as we were going. And after a few years, we had thousands and thousands of customers. We had about a 40-person team, and we had hit that inflection point where I'm sure any business owner who's been there knows, like, we either needed to take outside funding and hire a true like CEO and COO and all those things, or sell to somebody who could take us to the next level. My husband and I, as a husband and wife team, we're running this business. We have two little kids at home. We're both working 80 hours a week. And it was one of those things where I was getting to do less and less of the creative stuff that I love to do, like teaching people how to market, looking at trends, coming up with the video content, and more operations and management, which I did not like, to be frank. I don't like to manage a team. I would much rather be out there like the idea generator person. And also at the time, we didn't know. So he ended up being diagnosed with glioblastoma shortly thereafter we sold. We didn't know it at the time, but he was starting to have some indications of his health not being great with like severe migraines and things. And so, I mean, hindsight's 2020. Thank goodness we sold when we did because um, he wouldn't have been able to do both and go on with that diagnosis. But we had been connected with FMG throughout the entire time the company started. They were aware of us, we were aware of them. And the thing that made it such a great fit was that they were willing to take our vision and all the tools we had built and the processes and the design aesthetic and roll it into what they wanted to build. They had really been deeply involved in the BD space for a while, and they were looking to break more into RA, which is what we had. So it just really aligned well. And once, we kind of got a vision for what the future would look like, it was a good fit. And we knew they were going to take care of all of our people. We were going to be able to continue doing the things we love to do. And so, yeah, I mean, candidly, there was about 5 other companies that wanted to buy us before that, and none of them felt right. My husband got into a screaming match with a very well-known executive, very big company that you would all know because of how wrong it was, right? And so, yeah, I think just like everything else, it's like trusting your gut. You like what is really going to fit well and align well. And I couldn't be happier. I mean, it was the right decision 100%.
I appreciate you giving us that insight and sharing it. There's one question I see it. I'm going to come back to it in a minute, but I want to make sure we have some time to talk about the importance of authenticity from the professional side. I think from the personal side, I hope you already understand why it's better to be able to be yourself. But on a professional side, what are the benefits you've seen? You think of all the advisors you work with. Surely there are some that are more authentic and some that aren't. What are the benefits you've seen from like their business? Obviously, people are here because they want to grow their business and do it in a way that feels right. What are the benefits you've seen from the advisors you guys work with?
So I don't know if any of you have seen that stat. It was from like BNY Mellon, and it was like I think it was 68% of consumers they had surveyed said they could not tell the difference between one financial advisor and another. Like they just couldn't. And so the way they were making choices was either on referrals or meeting the person in person. However, we know these next generations that are coming up to find an advisor are going online to find them, right? And so what happens if you're not meeting someone in person? How are you getting to know them and know whether they're a good fit? And that getting to know you is happening online through content, through video, through blogging, through social media. And one of the things that people forget is if someone comes into your office, they're going to see on your wall the skateboards or the pictures of the rapper you love. They're going to see your tattoos on your arm if you're wearing a t-shirt, right? And they'll be able to talk to you about all of that. They're going to see the picture of your kids or the picture of Positano on your back, like I have here. And I'll say, oh, that's where me and my husband went on our honeymoon. It allows you to take all of the conversations you would have. What I'm saying is that people forget that all of those conversations that would normally happen in an office can't happen online if you don't share about yourself. Like that's why you have to do it, because it builds that reciprocity. So you'll share something and then the other person maybe shares a little bit more back. So what the benefit is it gives you a leg up in being somebody that other people remember, because they're going to remember the skateboards on your wall, not some bland background that says nothing about you and gives them no insight into who you are.
What about for those who aren't content creators? Not every advisor likes to create content, but there's still ways to be authentic when it comes to work. When you think about that standpoint, for removing content from it, what are other ways that authenticity can show up? It probably will be in the office, but what are other ways you think about authenticity when it comes to non-content ways?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about, wearing the clothes that you feel comfortable in. So obviously you want to still be professional. You don't want to show up in like your dirty pajamas or something, but The clothes that you wear, the conversations that you have. If somebody, I'm sure many of you have been in a situation like this where you meet someone and you're like, man, they'd be great for the bottom line of our business, but they start saying things and you're like, dude, I can't spend any more time with you. Like, this is
Hmm.
awful. And I've had situations like that where I've had to say to somebody after spending a little bit of time with them, I just think he'd be a better fit for you to work with X, and then give them a list of people that they could reach out to. So yeah, not just in the content that you create, but maybe even the stories you tell.
Hmm.
So, there's an advisor I know who is obsessed with everything outdoors, like hunting, fishing, and even hunting in our world today can be controversial with people. So for a while, he kind of had stopped talking about it. And people would be like, what'd you do this weekend? And he like didn't want to say I went
Hmm.
hunting. And then he realized that wasn't being authentic to him. So he started talking about it again. So, simple things like that, even.
I think another way to think about authenticity is the way that you try to grow your business. So, if we're not doing content, referrals or webinars or seminars or just shaking hands and networking groups, I think that's another way to think about your authenticity and how it can help you grow your business. Like, I'm not going to go to a networking group. I did that out of college when I was first getting started. I absolutely hated it because it just felt like it was like I don't know, like it was just like I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. I know
Yeah.
nothing
More
about you, but let's exchange
transactional.
card. Yeah, it just didn't feel right for me. So I could never go do that. But I know there are a lot of advisors that have used those networking groups, Toastmasters or whatever it might be, to grow their business. If that is authentic to you, then go do it. Again, like when I think about authenticity, it's across the board. How can you fully be yourself? If you like to go network old traditional way, if you like to cold call still, do it because that's when you're going to be the best version of you, which is where you're going to have the best results. I think it's when we compromise and force ourselves to try something because, oh, Sam said writing's the best way to grow. I'm going to try to write, but I absolutely hate it. Well, you're probably not going to write anything good because you're not enjoying it. So find the things that you enjoy and incorporate that in. And then the obvious one also alludes to something you talked about before, is just like the setup of your office. Like it could be the books if you have a waiting room, the books you have on the waiting room. So if you enjoy surfing, you have a bunch of books that are surf related on there or whatever
Yeah.
it might be, but just showing little bits of yourself in that stuff can go a long way as well.
I remember doing, I had a day where I had all these meetings back to back and I needed headphones and I could not find my AirPods anywhere. And I had to use my daughter's neon, like, or they're like teal, but they're like neon teal little kid headphones. These recordings. So I'm showing up to these, like the one was like a really big enterprise meeting with for a potential like really, really good payout. And I had these little kid headphones on. And I was just like, I'm so sorry. Somebody took my AirPods. I don't know where they are. I have three little kids at home. It's sort of crazy. And everybody laughed about it.
Hmm.
Maybe that makes me look scatterbrained or like I'm not paying attention, but I was like, but I'm here. I'm still here. And it's like a running joke now between the people who were in that meeting. So yes, I think there are lots of ways that you could do it.
I mean, if I'm on the other side of the screen, I mean, I might chuckle at first when I see that, but also like I'm thinking she must be really good that she has the confidence to show up in these little kid headphones because you have to be a confident person to be able to do that. So like there's all these, but there's no way for you to know that that's how it's going to be interpreted on my end,
Right.
which again goes back to you should be doing what you think is right. And even if that scenario, if you're comfortable doing it because you can't control what other people think. And it may not be as bad as you thought it was. Something you mentioned when you're talking about 20 over 10 and managing the team from a like a leadership standpoint, whether you're leading the firm or leaders in our profession that want to try to bring more authenticity, which I think will bring more diversity and inclusion to the profession. As a leader, how can leaders support people being their true self? And what made me think about it was you're talking about how somebody had to come from a company where there's a no dread policy or no
Yeah.
nose ring policy. And I have to admit that I think I have had it easy to be my authentic self in the profession because I'm of the majority. So like one of the first things I did when I started my company was I wanted to piss off all the old guys at the conferences. So I didn't wear suits. I would wear graphic tees, Jordans on stage, and just like dress the way I wanted to, but almost try to do it in a way to like buck the way things used to be. But I have a friend of mine who said, I remember he was telling me how he wished he could wear his hair and like like locks like Jay-Z. And I was like, do it. Like, why would you not? And he was like, because I don't think people will take me seriously. And I'm like, but I'm like, look at Jay-Z. He's like, Jay-Z didn't get locks until he was a billionaire. And so those are things that like I have never experienced that because whatever I wanted to do, I just
Yeah,
naively just did it and no one challenged me.
right.
So I want to first acknowledge that maybe not everybody on this call or watching the replay has the liberty that I have had to just show up the way I want to because of various differences.
That's a good
From a
point.
leadership standpoint, how can leaders embrace people being themselves?
I mean, I think the first thing that I've recognized is the more unique perspectives you have, the better your team is going to be for it because the people you're trying to reach all have unique perspectives for the most part. Even when you have a client profile, right? Like not everyone thinks the same.
Mhm.
So having people with unique perspectives makes you more creative, makes you think differently, look at things from different angles, which always is going to make the business better. So even if you feel a little uncomfortable sometimes, like trying to remind yourself of that, I think is a good thing. And then, practicing what you want other people to also do. So I think a lot of times leaders can be a little bit hesitant to maybe share what they did on the weekend because they don't want to like create too much of a familial type of relationship with the people they're leading. Like they want to have that separation. And I get that. My husband was that way. He did not like to talk about anything personal with employees. But I would say, like, oh, what'd you guys do this weekend? We were at kids' birthday parties all weekend and it was a little chaotic and I needed 3 extra cups of coffee this morning or something. Nothing too personal,
Mhm.
but enough for them to build that reciprocity in that relationship. And things like we have a Slack channel at FMG in our marketing group where people all just share pictures of their kids and babies and pets from like whatever we're doing as a way to keep each other up to date of like what's going on in our lives. And so it's just pictures nonstop of everybody's families because we're a remote company.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think things like that can go a long way.
I, I think part of it, and this is just me maybe stereotyping some of the leaders, but I think some of it is it's ego driven. And I would challenge those that are in a leadership role to kind of put your ego aside. And I think maybe some of the fear is that if my employees or my team is so interesting that people will be more drawn to them than they would be to me.
Oh,
And I think celebrating what makes your team so great, which is probably a lot of who they authentically are and uniquely are, would go a long way from building rapport and keeping the team together. And at the end of the day, I think if your team's doing better, then you, the leader, are going to do better as well. So I think there's a little bit of that, but I also think that it's important to at least consider it and find ways that are authentic to the firm and the way you're comfortable doing it to encourage that. Because I think the younger generation, whether you think they have the right to want this or not, I think that's what they're going to be looking for. And if you're
yeah.
looking to grow, I think a younger professional is going to be more likely to join a firm who's going to allow them to express some of their individuality and allow them to be themselves and celebrate them rather than put them inside a box that they don't want to be in.
And I think too, one of the things that really is we tried to really do from the get-go was always talk to people about what was their career path. So I think we had a
Mhm.
really unique situation in that, we built the company about 40 employees and most people stayed the entire time. I mean, it was not a super long period of time, a few years, but most people stayed. And if somebody was considering leaving, we had the kind of relationship they'd come to me and say, look, I got this amazing job offer and the salary's better, but I want to keep working here. Can we talk about it? Or, hey, I'm feeling a little stagnant right now and not challenged. I've been here for 3 years. What, like, we're a small company. Do you see me being able to go anywhere or do anything? And so the fact that they felt comfortable enough to come to us and know like it wasn't going to be like, okay, we're going to replace you right away. That always made me feel really good that
Mhm.
they felt like they could be honest about what it is they wanted and where they were trying to go and know that if we could, we would support them in that growth, which isn't always the case. Sometimes the answer was like, no, there's not a higher position for you here, but if you can just be honest with us, we'll support you in finding that next
Mhm.
role.
And that's not normal. Like that's awesome that you guys did that. It makes me
I
think
know.
of another example of encouraging and supporting your team to kind of tap into their authenticity, one of the advisors I'm working with kind of through the Life Design Plus that I'm doing and helping him figure out what his path is going to be for the long term, it was his partner and technically would be his boss that connected us.
Hmm.
So the firm is investing in him to help him figure out what's the right path for him at their firm to be the best version of himself.
That is so
And
smart. More people should
that's
hire
really cool. Yeah.
because so many people, advisors are like, I don't want to serve everybody, but what
Hmm.
niche do I really want to focus on and what services do I want to offer? So being able to sit down and go through that process, especially from the get-go before you're too
Hmm.
entrenched.
Yeah. So I just want to challenge the leaders out there to consider opening up a little bit of freedom for people to be who they are. And obviously it has to align with the overall firm, but and then doing that in a way again that is authentic to the way you as a manager feel. But I just think that so many people are afraid to kind of bring their self to because they're told they're not. And maybe your employees think that and that's not the case. You just have never given them the permission, so they just assume I've got to match everybody else. Um, I want to bring up a question that is a little bit kind of a tangent, but I can bring it in and connect it. So, because I want to try to hit every question if possible. What are the best ways to build and monetize community without becoming transactional? And let me explain how I'm going to bring this into our conversation of authenticity. If you're being your authentic self and you are growing your business with like-minded people who like you for you, then depending on what that commonality is that brings everybody together, might provide an opportunity to foster more community above and beyond just the relationship you have as a financial advisor. So one way I can think of, I'll give you a second to think about it, Sam, is that setting up like a community platform for these individuals to go into. You could do that to monetize it. I had a business plan at one time that I pivoted away from, but I was going to have a community for entrepreneurs and it was included in the relationship. But the only way to get in the community was you had to work with me. So I wasn't going to monetize the community by charging, $500 a year. The monetization of it was the only way you get into this community of great entrepreneurs in Indiana is you have to work with RLS Wealth. And then that would be the monetization is they were working with me, paying the management fee, the financial planning fee, and I, bake in the cost of whatever the community would have been. But I do think there is the opportunity. And I think that depending on your niche, depending on who you're serving, there could be a lot of value in that because if you're getting like-minded people in there, you may not have to do much in the way of managing it. It takes care of itself and you're bringing them together with like-minded people who have similar ideas and some cool things could come out of it. So you could monetize it by charging. I would run all that through compliance of how do you do that? Obviously, it'll probably be an outside business activity, but like, how does that work from a compliance standpoint? But that's one way. A newsletter could be another one. You write a newsletter for the people that you're trying to work with that have an interest in what you are interested in, and you can monetize that as well. Sam, do you have any other options?
I feel like this is one area I'm actually really bad at. I tend to just give everything away for free
Mm-hmm.
and give people as much of like information as I can. And I need to probably be better about, I don't even want to say gating content, but like I just have found, at least for me, that the more I interact with people and just tell them stuff, the more that they want to pay me to
Mm-hmm.
help them. And
Mm-hmm.
that has worked to my benefit. I did have somebody, just multiple people in the last year, ask if I would like start a community for advisors who want to learn certain marketing tactics and learn from me, but then learn from each other. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's an interesting idea. And there's so many ways you can monetize. To your point, you can have private groups, you can have community platforms, you can obviously have newsletters, you can have sponsors. So you could have something that you do and then people sponsor it. I think the main thing is if it starts to feel too transactional, then it's not a community anymore because a
Mm-hmm.
community is people who are kind of all on the same page. So yeah, you don't want it to feel like you're nickel and diming people for
Mm-hmm.
sure. But I think like if you have a subscription that's just a set subscription and people get something for that, people are used to that.
One thing also to consider if newsletter was the route you might go to monetize that, um, a lot of people will give the newsletter away for free, which is probably my style. But you have someone like Nick Murray who has had his newsletter forever, very strict with the rules behind it, and has a bunch of advisors subscribing. The only thing to think about is once you put a price tag on that, now, at least for me, it shifts what it really is. And I don't know if I was charging for my daily notes, let's say, I don't know if I could create them the same way I create them today because I
Right.
feel like there's pressure. I have to bring value because people are paying versus I'm going to write whatever I want to write, and if they don't like it today, so what? They didn't pay for it. It's just my thought. So
Yeah.
adding a monetization to it may also change the way you view it, which may change your success with doing it.
That's why I find like courses to be to me more natural. Like if you have a
Mhm.
course and it's like a set thing you're going to teach someone
Mhm.
or a book that you wrote, you know, that seems to be an easier way to monetize, in my opinion, than just like a community where people are learning from each other. That's just me.
Yeah. All right, so a really good question came in. I want to get to that, but also real quick, I want to show an example of what authenticity could look like on a website. So we were talking about different ways, and a friend of mine, Eric Rodriguez, just had his website redone. I didn't ask him, but it's a public website, so I don't think he's going to care. So Eric, if you see this later on and you didn't want me to, I'm sorry, but it's public website.
Oh,
So
it looks so good. I
I
haven't
just
seen
want to show you kind of like how showing up authentically on your website can be conveyed. And I don't think this takes away from the professionalism. It might, somebody who wants somebody in a suit in an office is not going to call Eric, but that's probably okay because there's probably other reasons that would not be a good fit. So I just have a couple of the pages, but this is the home page, and you can see he's wearing something more comfortable, smiling, the nice back setting. The next picture has his family. He's got a backwards hat on. Um, and
Look at that.
then
It's like a family of models. My goodness.
the clicker on Canva. There we go. And like even why I aim high. So he's sharing basically why he does what he does, but it's using his words too. Like it's not my mission. Why I aim high is probably something you would hear Eric say, and it's just little things like that that bring a lot of personality to it
Oh
and
my gosh,
and bring it
that is
in.
such a good point because I always am telling everybody, get rid of the section of your website that says our mission, our values. Like no
Mhm.
one is going to read that.
Right.
But if you change the wording to something like that, then they might.
Mhm.
It's the corporate speak has to go. Nobody
Mhm.
cares.
All right. So I want to get to the one question there. There's a question about how to improve the messaging that you referenced earlier, books, podcasts, videos. I'm going to include a list of things, and if there's anything that you have in mind, send that to me. And
Mhm.
so in the follow up email with the replay and the PDF I have, I'm also going to put out notes from today because we did not script this presentation, so I didn't know what we were going to say exactly to kind of have a summary to give everybody. So I'm going to go back and listen to this tonight and tomorrow, put together some notes, the highlights that I think are really important to take away, and then I'll include some books and things of that sort, like The Alchemist and other things that would be helpful in that one. So that'll answer that question. And the final one, and then we'll kind of tie things up, is I'm most comfortable navigating, posting, engaging on LinkedIn, but my niche, um, LGBTQ, entrepreneurs, entertainers, are not spending much time on LinkedIn. They're mostly on Instagram or YouTube, but I'm not nearly as comfortable posting pictures, creating reels, or making long form video. My fear is I'm speaking into a void on LinkedIn if my niche isn't consuming content there. Is the writing on the wall? Do I just need to embrace Instagram and YouTube?
But the first thing that comes to mind is you could have a lot of people who are on LinkedIn just not very vocal about the fact that they also are that audience because they don't feel comfortable on LinkedIn. So, you know, I wouldn't just give it up necessarily, but if you're not seeing momentum there and you know you can tap into people in other areas, you can get creative with, you know, what you do. So maybe you're not as comfortable just you being on camera, but maybe you could interview other people that isn't, for instance, someone who's an entertainer who, you know, has gone through something, and you can talk with them about it and how they navigated the financial decisions. And maybe, you know, the interview series allows you to ask the questions, and yeah, you're on camera, but the other person is the one really providing a lot of information. And so you're not just speaking at yourself. I think a lot of times an interview format is a lot less intense for people. And you know, stories on Instagram, I know reels are really popular, obviously, but stories are also still popular. And with stories, you can have it be like a Canva graphic that shares information there too. So I would say I would keep doing what you're doing on LinkedIn if you already have a system to do it, because you, like I said, you never know. There's a lot of lurkers out there that don't make themselves known. And then I would try one of the other platforms, but maybe try one of those alternative formats.
And the only thing I would be curious to know is if how much have you given to trying the video? And I know that starting out and doing video is really intimidating. It's not easy to do, but the more you do it, the more comfortable sometimes you'll get. So just not knowing, have you given it a hard try and know for a fact that you don't like it, or have you tried it once or twice and were just like, this is really hard?
Yeah.
Because you can go back to like my very first video ever on YouTube. I look at it and I cringe, but like I had to have that cringe video to get to where I can pop a camera on and just go. So
Oh, I cringe
right.
at mine too. I think we all cringe at the if you haven't cringed at the first one, it means you waited too long to post it.
Yes. Um, but I would say going back to doing what feels most authentic. If at the end of the day you give video a good try and it's just not you, then I would say don't do it. Because there's more ways to grow than just Instagram and YouTube. Yes, they're great. Yes, video is loved by the other platforms as well. But if it's going to be you stumbling over your words, not looking confident, looking flustered on a video, I think that'll do more harm.
Agreed.
So maybe it's just you give yourself, hey, I'm going to do 10 videos. I'm going to record them. I'm not even going to put them out. I'm just going to go through the process of getting in front of the camera. And there's little things you can do. Like the reason I first brought the boys on a video with me was I realized when I shot by myself, the first minute I sounded like a robot. And then I would ease into it. But if I had somebody in the room, even if I wasn't talking to them, just having Leo sitting in a chair next to me, that presence made me feel more at ease.
Yeah,
And so I was much more comfortable and enjoyed it more. And then people loved seeing him. So it kind of spiraled from there. So
a good
I
tip.
would I would say don't give up on it unless you've really tried it and pursued it hard now. And at the end of the day, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, then I would not do it as long as you've given it a try.
The
Um,
other the other thing to remember is you might, like for instance on Instagram, you could have a page that has a lot of great information that's no video, and you just spend a ton of time commenting on other people's posts so that they're like, who is this person? And then they go to click over to your page and they're like, oh, this person helps people just like me. And then they click over to your website, and maybe the writing that you're doing on the website is what really allows them to get a sense of who you are. So don't also discount the idea that just engaging with other people's posts where then they come back to check you out in and of itself can be a great strategy.
And then the final thing would be, are there any platforms that your audience might be on that aren't those other ones? Because again, how many clients do you really need? All right, we're bumping up against the top of the hour. Thank you, everybody who threw questions in there. I was really hoping we would get some because I felt like that would take the conversation to a new level. Sam, thank you. I will have a couple more slides I want to show real quick. I mentioned all this already, but I put this video on. I wanted to make sure I played because I thought it was really cute and I was proud of it. So I do have takeaways that I'm going to send all of you. So I will send the replay out, and then in that email will include a summary of today's conversation with what I think are the high points, and you can always go back and replay and add your own. I have a PDF that will kind of walk you through some questions just to start helping you figure out, are you living your authentic life? Are you bringing that to your practice, and how could you? And then again, the replay will be in there. So if you want to follow Sam, I'm sure you already are, but if not, she's Samantha20 on Twitter, at Samantha C. Russell on LinkedIn, and then fmgsuite.com is the website if you want to work more with her on taking your authentic self and messaging that and building that out for your company. Now, I've released that Lillian Turner is going to be the next one, but I have not released the date for the next webinar in the series. It's going to be June 19th, same time, 2 o'clock Eastern time. And Lillian Turner is an up and coming advisor. She just launched her own firm and she's doing it in her own unique way. So I thought it would be really cool to have somebody who's at the beginning stages of building her firm and doing it in a different way, talk about how she came up with that, what she's doing, how she's building the technology out, everything about launching. So I think this is going to be a valuable conversation for someone who might be considering starting their own firm, or maybe you just want to know what are the new technologies that are out there if you haven't revisited it before. So I'm excited to have her on, and that one is going to be sponsored by wealth.com. But I want to thank the AGC one more time for sponsoring this webinar today. So that is everything that I had. I want to again thank you, Sam. I thought this was everything that I wanted to be and more. I
Yes.
hope all of you enjoyed it. Respond back on email. Let me know what you thought. What could I do better? I've got 5 more of these to go, and I plan on doing these more often. So I want to make sure I do these in a way that brings a lot of value, but also makes them more exciting than your traditional webinar. So, any closing thoughts, Sam?
I'm just so thankful that I got to be guest number 1. So thank you for having me. And it was nice to get to interact with everybody who was here today and enjoy the beginning of summer right around the corner.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. And we'll see you out on social media and everywhere else. And look forward to continuing this conversation next month or any other time you guys want to chat about it.